Greetings and welcome to another Tomorrow's World webcast. My name is Wallace Smith and I wish I had something cheerier to talk about today. I hardly need to read a current news item to relate to all of you that terror is in the news. We know now the death toll has risen. It continues to rise steadily as injured are dying. That in Paris, the death toll is now at least 130 people of those terrible attacks they endured. We know that it seems like Al-Qaeda is trying to up the ante, trying to keep pace, at least be seen as still a player on the terrorism stage. Europe has terrorism on the mind, and who could blame them? I know a lot of us do as well. Where is all of this going? I want to talk about how these things may play into biblical prophecy. If you've followed us for a good length of time, you know that even before the September 11th attacks, this ministry had said that there will be terrorism in the United States, on the soil of the United States and Great Britain, that these things are coming. And indeed, prophecy does give us some guidelines, some expectations that when we look at what the Bible says the future holds, we can see that things like this could play into it in a number of different ways. Let me just throw out a few scenarios for you. For instance, we do know the Bible says that Europe will grow closer and closer in a very uncomfortable union, but a powerful union. They won't get along all that well, the individual nations, but they will have to come together to fulfill prophecy. And one of the things exposed by this Paris attack is that right now the nations of Europe aren't communicating all that thoroughly. In fact, actually, I have a post from The Guardian from November 19th, 2015. At the time, they were updating things minute by minute, and they had a feed that at the time was titled "Suspected Paris Attacks Ringleader Abdel Hamid Abaoud Killed in Saint Denis Raid." And they were just tracking the tail of this fellow and how they were chasing him down and did apparently kill him. And there was a point made, a comment concerning the French Interior Minister, where in The Guardian they said France relied solely on its own intelligence and got no information from other European countries that Abaoud was in Europe and could possibly travel to France until the attack happened. They weren't aware because there wasn't all that much sharing of information. One way in which these things can fit into prophecy is that Europe considers the need to work more closely together. It also highlights the fact that in Bible prophecy, a much more militarized Europe is pictured, being led by the nation of Germany. The superpower that Europe is becoming is pictured actually in Revelation chapter 13. And there in verse 4, speaking of this superpower, it says, "Who is like the beast? Who is able to make war with him?" We know that eventually Europe is going to be more militarized, that it is going to have troops at its disposal, and that actually it's going to be one of the most powerful war-making entities that the world has ever seen in all of mankind's history. Something has to spur that along. And at least what I see reflected in these terrorism plots is the potential to spur such militarization. We also know that prophecy points to a coming conflict between the king of the north, which will be a superpower Europe, and the king of the south, which is a confederacy of Arab nations. Actually, the Bible paints this interesting relationship between those two powers developing over time. To fail to see these things in prophecy, in terms of these terrorist attacks and the growing tension between Europeans and their growing Muslim population, to fail to see some dynamic growing potentially between the future king of the north and king of the south would be to be failing to pay attention. There's another conflict of worldviews that actually is so large, I'd like to devote a separate webcast to that. The final matter I'll simply mention for this particular webcast is that prophecy foretells a falling out, if you will, between the United States and Europe. A growing division of vast proportions. And to me, what's fascinating when I see what's going on in Europe right now in the response to these attacks is a growing frustration that it seems as though America is not cleaning up its own mess. Many people are beginning to blame America for its policies in the Middle East, and that somehow that is the cause of all these things. And yet America seems like it's been indifferent in terms of jumping in to lead and try to solve these problems. In fact, what have we seen recently? That France, a NATO nation, has turned to Russia, of all entities, the nation, the old USSR, that NATO was formed to counterbalance, and they've turned to Russia as an ally trying to solve their problems. That normally would not have happened, but we're in a different environment. Frankly, an environment that feeds into prophecy. Prophecy does move forward, and sometimes we see it moving forward on the front pages of our own newspaper. I hope this has been beneficial, and I hope you'll check out everything we have at tomorrowsworld.org.